Good morning, Columbia County. Welcome to this another Wednesday edition of Columbia County Connect. Happy to have you with us this morning. If you got any questions, any comments, we welcome those. If we can't take them up today, we'll take them up next week. A couple of announcements as far as Columbia County staff before we get into our guests here this morning. Every year when our budget, the county budget is adopted, our Internal Services Director, Leanne Reese, prepares a comprehensive budget document, sends it to the Government Finance Officers Association for consideration. And this year, we got an award based on policy document, financial plan, operations guide, and communications device from 14 different criteria by this group. This is one in a series of awards that our finance director has got. And you say, well, why is this important? Well, they look after the money of the county, all your taxpayers' money, our taxpayers' money. They get everything ready for the internal auditors. They get it ready for the year-end audit so that the public can see where every single dollar that the county handles has gone. So we congratulate Leanne again for that award. Also, this week, the Columbia County Fire Rescue, all of our fire protection is operating 100% on the new 800 megahertz radio system. The final inspections were made in the trucks, and now they can have intercommunication with all the other agencies of the county, the Sheriff's Department, EMS, all. These are the radios that allowed us to operate so efficiently during the ice storm of 2014, when cell phones were down, landlines were down. This is the only system that held up. And now we have those equipped in all of our fire trucks. And then just a few photos from our Bring One for the Chipper event. This is where people bring in their Christmas trees. They're mulched up and given to citizens as they need. This is handled by our Columbia County Greens Program Manager, Jenny Henson, and her staff, and with the cooperation of Georgia Power, Precision Waste, and Home Depot. They chipped up 1,300 trees, saved those from the landfill. Of course, I guess a lot of trees still went to Clark's Hill to have beds for the fish, which makes all the fishermen happy. But we thank all of these people involved with this for doing this every year around the holiday season. We got two gentlemen here this morning. Probably got two of the toughest jobs in county government. Paul Scarborough, who is head of our building inspection department and code enforcement and a few dozen other things, Paul.
Yep.
And Gary Bennett, who is our stormwater manager. You guys get to tell people they do some things right, but most of the time you're telling them that they're doing things wrong, right?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Paul, I believe from the graph that we looked at in committee yesterday that you brought us your year-end results, 1,229 residential building permits during 2015.
That's correct.
That is up a few from 14. What do you expect for 16?
Well, the trend has been over the last several years, Chairman, the trend has been positively moving, ticking upward. Last year we were up quite a bit, with around 7 to 8%, and the trend seems to be the same thing this year. We're looking forward to being the same next year as the Cyber Command comes to Fort Gordon. We only expect the increase to maintain, if not grow, over that.
People don't realize, I guess, unless you're building a house, what goes on from your department in inspections. We got a figure here that says you did 21,649 inspections in 2015. That's about 83 a day. Now, how many people you got?
We have 9 employees, and that number is just considering the building inspections we do. There are other inspections that we do which adds to that total. There's quite a number of inspections. We go in from when we're breaking ground out there until we finally close out a structure and allow occupancy of the building. You know, anything from electrical, mechanical, plumbing, the framing. There's quite a number of inspections that go into that, and that entails a lot of time going back and actually meeting with some of the trades workers or some of the builders along the way. And that's not even incorporated into some of the times we just go out as a courtesy in order to just speak with the builder and talking through maybe some concerns he or she may have on site.
From your experience, what is the main area of failure in building inspections? Is it mechanical, electrical, or is it in foundations or framing? What do you think?
I would say it's pretty much about across the board about the same. You're going to have your electrical seems to be a heavy item that we hit. Framing, you have those, but I think it's pretty much equal across the board. It's not one that's more critical than the other, but also there's those that are you have tradesmen that come and go. So whether they come in from out of town or they're local people, the workforce seems to change up a fair amount, and with that, then you're training people every day, and then with that, you comes with the little small items you find on the job sites. That nothing too tremendous that we see out there.
You don't have any illegal people working, do you?
Illegal and in the aspect of where they're licensed properly, I'm assuming.
Well, that is something that you look at, and you've got some people that visit job sites and check for the legitimacy of the workers all the time, don't you?
That is correct. We do have our code enforcement people who do go out, and we're checking different sites and maintaining, making sure they are licensed properly, or whether that be a state license or they hold a county occupation tax, and ensuring that they're having that. And if they don't, we stop the job site and have them come in and pull that occupation tax. And part of that procedure of getting the occupation tax, we're checking, make sure if you're supposed to have a state license, we do check with the state and make sure that license is active, is current, and is also part of that, and make sure you have your bonds and insurance in place at the time before issuing of the occupation tax.
Well, as part of that whole system, your area does alcohol license too, doesn't it?
That is correct. We do alcohol license as well, and part of that process is the submitting the application, get a background checks done, ensuring that everyone who's submitting for that application is legitimate, who they are, and to make sure the background is clean before issuing that alcohol license.
And you can't get an alcohol license if you got a criminal background, right?
That is correct. And each year when we do the renewal, we do run a second background check, or whatever year they're into the business, and we run that background check, ensure with the sheriff's office that is clean before we recommend approval of an alcohol license.
And we've had some confusion with particularly people that's new in business. The alcohol license process with the background check and all is about a 45 to 60 day process. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman. But by the time we get the application in, we send off the background check. We get that in. The time frame, and if it's a new license, we have to advertise. The site has to be posted, allowing the public to know that if someone has applied for an alcohol license at this location, giving them time to have notice to come in if they have concerns.
Is that a 30-day post?
That is a 30-day post, that's correct.
Okay. You also handle code enforcement in areas other than building, right?
That is correct. We have quite a large number of areas that we cover, that be from maintaining a house, so just keeping the house up and maintained in a safe manner, abandoned vehicles, vehicles parked in the street, people trying to operate a business from a home, zoning issues. We have quite a number of, like I said, overgrown yards. Of course, by our ordinance, it says you must be maintained your grass for less than 10 inches, and there are quite a number of those that we see out there. Well, code enforcement does go out and look at occupation tax as well. Any of the complaints that come in, that we'll go out and check, whether it may be of someone cleaning debris out of the yard, having trash in the yard, pools that are not maintained properly. We have those as well, fences that are not maintained properly. Quite an array of concerns coming into our 311 system, and calls coming directly into our code enforcement office.
And we do have a process now for looking at abandoned properties and trying to keep neighborhoods up to county standards, and you do try to find the owner of the property and tell them what has to be done and possibly cite them if it's not done?
That is correct. We go out and we do try to track down who the owner are, who may be. If something may have been foreclosed on, someone may have just moved out. The person who lived there was deceased and no living relatives. In some cases, the bank may own the property, mortgage companies, and then we have to track those down and it may be in another state, and then we're trying to get them to get someone on site to come back in and maintain the property, make sure everything's cleaned up, and keeping, like you said, the value of those houses around it where it should be, because it wouldn't nothing worse than living close to or near a house that has been abandoned, or even the individuals living there letting it be overgrown.
That process takes a considerable amount of time, doesn't it?
It does, and it takes us a long time to track some individuals down, and then just to get compliance, we send out letters letting them know, you have the 30 days or 12 days, whatever it may be, to clean the site up before we try to take action in order to come out and have that site cleaned up if no one's in the structure.
Your people ever pick up any political signs on right-of-way?
All the time. Political season is a very interesting time of the year, or time that we have to go out and pull signs from right-of-way. If they're on private property, that's fine, but getting those signs that are in the right-of-way, and they're considered across the board, you get a lot, and it seems to be we get quite a number of complaints about those signs being in the right-of-way.
You might clarify, there's always issues of signs and the freedom of speech doctrine, but you cannot place political signs or any other kind of sign on county right-of-way that is owned by the taxpayers.
That's correct.
You can't allow one special interest to be there without being totally covered up with those. And there are, on private property, as Paul said, you can have signs, but that can be taken away by neighborhood covenants if you signed the covenants when you bought the property.
That's correct.
And that is up to the neighborhood association to enforce.
That's right. That's correct.
So there is some confusion about what you can do with your own property sometime, because all of us libertarian leaning people kind of think we should be able to do what we want to with our own property, but for the common good there are rules that govern there, particularly on publicly owned properties.
Right.
Well, Paul, you got a big job, and I know it's a struggle every day to keep the standards up, because there is so much going on in Columbia County. If we wasn't growing, you wouldn't have near the problems, would you?
Nowhere near the problem, but the job is there for us to do, and we're willing to get out and do that job every day, because it is for the citizens of Columbia County. And I know that the commission administration and the request that they have of us, and ensuring that we 10 years from now are still the county that people are looking to move into.
Well, we appreciate the job you do. You do a valuable part in the operation of the county. Gail, we had any rain lately?
A little bit.
A little bit?
A little bit.
Like maybe the wettest of the last 6 months in a long time?
Yes, sir.
Gary's job is to, well, among things, is to enforce the soil erosion policies, the Clean Water Act. And being the size that we are, Gary, we're allowed to be a licensing authority or local issuing authority for site plans, which includes, I believe, the review of storm water soil erosion measures on every project that's larger than an acre.
Yes, sir.
So anything bigger than an acre, you got to submit a plan, and your group applies the regulations handed down from EPA at the federal level to EPD at the state level to us as the local issuing authority. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And those regulations, I guess, are contained in what y'all refer to as the Green Book,
Yes, sir.
and that is one of those there that's a pretty good sized manual. What is the biggest problem we have with the requirements in that manual as far as a guy goes out to build a house, he submits it, well, he doesn't necessarily submit a plan on residential, do they?
Unless they intend to do grading. If they do not grade the lot, then they do not have to submit a plan.
But if they grade the lot, a single lot, They
would
have to
need,
submit a plan.
they would submit a plan showing how they intend to change topography and how they intend to handle erosion control.
All right, now, in theory, the concept is when you develop a piece of property, the ultimate runoff should not exceed what it was as in its natural state.
That is correct.
And the old rule of thumb was that a piece of property would absorb 95% of the water and run off 5%. And if it was developed, it probably would absorb 5% and run off 95%. But I believe over the years that's changed a little bit. What do y'all look at now as far as the index for runoff on a normal, say, residential lot and a commercial lot?
Well, we look at a lot of different things. One thing would be the water quantity, which we review the reports on the 2-year through the 100-year storm event to determine how much flow is leaving that site in the pre-developed condition. And then we compare that to when they build it out, what that flow would be in the post-developed condition. And the intent of the law is to make sure that water is leaving the site at a value less than pre-developed, so we can't have flooding downstream. That's the intent of the law. The other thing we have to look at is water quality. And depending on the size of the project and what type of project, we would review what kind of practices are implemented in the plan to help remove suspended solids from that site in the post-developed condition to help improve water quality downstream.
The first requirement usually that happens around a site is graded is the silt fence, right?
Correct.
And this doesn't necessarily have to go all the way around the project, but a lot of people, just to be safe, do that around the project. But actually it should be in areas where the water's running downhill and you filter it somewhat before it can run off of the site. Is that the normal thinking?
That's the typical thinking. You install it downstream and parallel to the contour so that water hits it uniformly and then allows it to filter through the silt fabric.
Now, we've had a lot of occasions in the last I guess you'd say current wet season, because it's only been a couple of weeks since we had a heck of a bunch of rain. The design process is that we're currently designing for a 25-year rainfall.
In most situations, yes.
Now, in some it gets more.
Could be more, and it could be less. We do have some designs that are to the 2-year storm event, and we do have some designs that are up to the 100-year storm event.
Tell me a little bit of the difference in what constitutes the difference, the amount of runoff?
The amount of runoff and where it's going. If you have a culvert that's in a live stream, you have to design that for the 100-year storm event so that
It's going into a live stream?
that's going into a live stream, or actually piping a live stream, you have to do that. The typical drainage system in your subdivision would be designed to the 25-year storm event. And then if you were doing something that was for water quality, you would look at the 1-year or even the 2-year storm event.
Now, in those standards, a 100-year occurrence is that you would have one of those occurrences in 100 years, right?
That's not correct.
That's not correct. Okay,
You have
straighten me out here.
you have a 1% annual chance of that happening.
1%. Well, that's 1 in 100, isn't it?
Well, a lot of people look at it as 1 in 100 years. So if we had one this year, we're good for another 99 years. But unfortunately,
That's not the case,
That's
huh?
not the case.
Oh, okay. And if you have a 50-year occurrence,
That's a 2% annual
2%
chance.
chance. And so with the 25-year standard, we're looking at a 4% chance.
Yes, sir.
Now, we have had some overwhelmed storm drainage systems. So we've had quite a few of those 2%ers and maybe a 1%er in the last couple of years, right?
For sure. Yes, sir.
For sure.
We've had a couple 100-year storm events happen just this year in the spring.
Now, what is the disadvantage or problem with designing for everything for the 1% occurrence?
The systems would be so large, it would be impractical to build.
How about expense?
Expense would be very considerable to design to that one storm. And that's why it's usually reserved for stuff that's public safety issue, whether it be a flooding event through a live stream, whether it's a floodplain associated with it. Those are usually when they're reserved for that.
Certain part of lots, particularly more in Columbia County, as the best real estate has been, bought up or almost bought up. Run over for the people the standards concerning wetlands and streams. There's pretty strict, under the Clean Water Act, there's pretty strict guidelines as to what you can do next to what's called a state water, which is certainly anything that's running, and maybe others that's not necessarily running all the time. What do you have to do if you're a builder or someone that goes out, wants to develop a piece of property and it's got wetlands and a stream on it?
Well, there's two different things there that we have to deal with. With the wetland areas, they are actually under the jurisdiction of the United States Corps of Engineers, which is straight from the EPA. So if there's any filling of the wetlands or any disturbance to the wetlands, they would have to go and get a wetlands permit to allow them to do that. That could be a nationwide permit, which means you're going to disturb a small amount, and you're basically filling out paperwork and letting everyone be aware, and you may have to do some mitigation work, all the way up to an individual permit where there's a lot more requirements and it's heavily scrutinized. On a stream or a state water, there is a buffer associated with it that's measured from the edge of the bank, and in our area is 25 foot. So inside that 25 foot, you're limited to what you can do inside of there, and really the only thing you can do is clear cut the underbrush and leave the canopy trees behind, but you can do some maintenance through there. But you can't do any work in there without getting some approval from the EPD.
And I don't believe most of that has to be done by hand, does it, and not mechanical?
Correct. You cannot have any vehicles in there. It has to be done all by hand.
That gets to be pretty touchy with a guy trying to develop. Explain a little bit these, what you mentioned on mitigation. You either want to pipe some wetlands or you want to fill them in. What is the process to seek that kind of permit or permission?
What you would do is you would fill out your pre-construction notification, which would go to Corps Engineers, and based on that you would determine how much of the wetlands you were filling, how much you would impact, and then submit your reports. Prior to that, you would have to do a determination to find out whether or not you had wetlands on your property, and the Corps Engineers would come down and verify that, and they would issue what is called a jurisdictional determination letter, and now you know where your wetlands are based on the Corps Engineer determination. From there you do your reports, and based on the quality of the wetlands and the type of impacts you're going to do, you would then fill out the worksheets to determine how much mitigation would be required, and from there you're basically buying a credit from a mitigation bank somewhere located in this area, and then purchasing that to allow you to do the disturbance in the wetlands, and basically puts the wetlands you've bought as a mitigation credit into a conservancy so that it can never be destroyed.
So you're swapping one area of wetland that you're going to change and paying to protect another one that might be in a different location.
Correct.
And so that it would never be disturbed.
Correct.
And there's people that has property that would sell those credits, correct?
Yes, sir.
What's a credit running these days, you know?
I have no idea. Last time I checked, they were very expensive.
So it's not the cheapest thing to go in and do anything in a wetland area.
No, sir.
What is the biggest violation you have in your area where you look at stormwater regulation enforcement?
On the erosion control side, usually it's just the maintenance of the best management practices that are installed, like your silt fence or your construction exits that you're required to put in per the Green Book. Usually that's our main violations we see. We do have some where it's improper installation. We also have some where once after the fact we find that what was designed by the design engineer actually is not sufficient, and then we have to get the plan revised to beef up those BMPs to help protect the streams in our watersheds.
Tell me the requirements. I believe you've got certain guidelines that you have to go out and inspect construction sites within a specified time of a reasonable rainfall. What are those guidelines?
State law requires, per the general construction stormwater permit, that within 24 hours you're supposed to inspect a site after any rainfall event is greater than half an inch. And that's required to be done by the developer or contractor. The county goes out to make sure that we have compliance with that rule, and we do our own inspections to make sure nothing is falling through the cracks. But that's a requirement of the builder, and they have to do that within 24 hours. They're also required to do a walkthrough of their site weekly to look at all their BMPs to make sure that they have everything covered and everything's installed correctly.
They have to document that?
They have to document that, and we actually review those documents if there's issues on the site. So we can make sure they're reviewing their deficiencies on a regular basis and getting those repaired.
How many inspectors do you have in your department?
We have 5 inspectors and 1 supervisor.
And you follow up on most of those construction sites. If you say have an inch of rainfall you do that within a day?
We try to, yes, sir. We have approximately 1,100 open permits right now that we're responsible to maintain and make sure they're in compliance. And we typically do anywhere between 2,200 to 2,500 inspections a month. So we try to get, a lot of times we're averaging about 2 or 3 a month per site, which is about almost once a week.
The regulations, particularly under the Clean Water Act, are rather pointed and severe, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
They can even go from just a reprimand or a stop work order. Let's just talk about stop work orders. What do your people look as guidelines to say that this can't continue because it's detrimental to the environment?
The Georgia Erosion Sediment Control Act requires us to follow up on inspections. On the third 5-day violation, where we give the builder or contractor a written notice that there's a violation on site,
And he's got 5 days to correct it.
he has 5 days to correct it. On the third such violation, we're required to issue a stop work order. And basically that's to say, okay, we've noticed this is the third time you've had an issue on your site, and we need to make sure we're all working together to get this done correctly. So that's one way we would issue a stop work order. Another way to do a stop work order is to start working on the site without a permit. If you haven't submitted for a grading permit, a building permit, or a development plan permit, then you're issued a stop work order until you can get those permits in place. And then the last way that we would issue a stop work order would be if there's sediment being discharged directly into an environmentally sensitive area, whether it be floodplain, wetlands, or creeks.
Now, that's an automatic stop work order.
Automatic stop work order, yes, sir.
That's not a judgment call. If that is happening, then everything stops until it's corrected.
Yes, sir.
What's the biggest challenge you see for your group as Columbia County continues to grow and the building sites become more and more difficult to adapt to construction?
It just dealing with the maintenance and making sure everybody's educated. Everybody is to be certified with the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission if they're doing land disturbing activity.
Now, what kind of card is that, a blue card?
That's blue card, yes, sir.
Blue card.
And they're required to have that certification if they're doing any land disturbing activity that requires a permit in the state of Georgia. And through that certification process, they're supposed to be educated on what is required to do during those activities to make sure that the watersheds are protected. We find that there's quite a few that aren't certified, and then we make sure they get their certification prior to going back to work. And then
that's an educational process. You take so many hours or something?
Yes, so there's I think an 8-hour course for the blue card, and then they take a test, and then they're issued their blue card. And I think every 2 years on the blue card you have to get a certification, which is a 2 or 4 hour class, and then you're recertified. And education is usually the biggest hurdle. Just everybody working together on the same page, and we're all working to the same goal.
Well, your area is kind of like Paul's, people that's intent on getting something built that they can sell and move on into the next project. Maybe not as concerned about some of these things as they should be from time to time. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
That if you can go ahead and get it done and get it covered up and move on, you're not as concerned with the little parts that can be really detrimental to the environment.
Yes, sir.
Well, we all understand that because everybody gets in a hurry. These are two of the probably less glamorous areas of county government, but they are two of the most important. These guys wring their hands all the time about how to handle problems with contractors, landowners, federal regulations, state regulations. They take a lot of beef from a lot of people, a lot of gruff comments, a lot of upset people, but it's extremely important what they do. We can't have the county that we have if we don't continue to enforce the regulations that keeps things in order and protects the environment, particularly our water system. And of course, we are very blessed here in having the Clarks Hill Lake as a good water source, the Savannah River, and we want to keep those just as pristine as we can. So guys, thank you for what you do. Thank you for being here. I hope we'll have a few questions come in about this program, and we'll attack those next week if we do. Thanks for being with us. Again, a very important part of county government. Probably not something you see real often, or probably not too familiar with these two gentlemen, but they are very important to the county. We'll see you next week.